What I've got here is the half pipe. I've cut all the way along and then tack welded it to the flat that goes from one end to the other, because I wanted that amount of height to achieve the profile. That's going to be the end result. So what you can see now is the two folds, and I'm about to make that curve to come over the top. So this is all being wheeled. You might be able to see the track marks in it, in the English wheel. And so the time now is to literally just ease this over. I'm trying to keep more of a downward pressure. It's got to shape itself slowly around the edges. I'm keeping more pressure in the middle because the edges always bend more. So you want to keep as much pressure around the middle. I'm just keeping it against my knee so it doesn't spring back up. It's coming over gently now without any kinking. Slowly just massaging it. You can feel it let go. I won't go past this point because I can feel through the metal and hearing it's just touching the top of that fold. That's why that fold is shorter, to allow me to go past the point. And then I let go, it comes up horizontal. And also I wanted the access should I need to do any paneling at any point. So this will all get pulled up straight a little bit. This is all being wheeled to have a crown, otherwise you end up with a billiard table, which is a non-factory look. I'm trying to get a sort of a custom factory look, if that makes sense. I don't like these flat sheets of aluminium welded to a frame and call it done. This will be bead rolled as well. And so I'm just massaging this up a little bit. I'm holding this down like that. If I need to, I'll go and check, and I will be gently pushing down on this and going around up and down until it all sits perfectly straight. Anyway, that'll give you an insight. So this gives you an idea of how it will sit. This rise here gives it a lot of strength, and it's also somewhere for the gas struts to attach to. So they will go in there, and then therefore this eventually will hinge up and be pushed up by a pair of gas struts. So the whole thing will come up and cover the entire bed. So we've just seen that in the video before, or earlier in this video. So that's how it's come out. So I'm going to be running some beads, a set of 6, same size as what's in here, these ribs here, but they'll be evenly spread across like the roof of your old wagons. And what that does is it stops oil canning and vibration as you're driving along. There will be at least one support. I may do 2. I'll have to see how that works out with clearing my fridge. That it comes up just above this in height. So got to have the importance of being able to camp with this thing. So the fridge has got to be able to go in there. And as it is, I have to get a shorter fridge than the one I currently use. So that will help clear it, and it'll be up near the tailgate end somewhere, so it's easy to get in and out of, and getting when you're making lunch and everything like that. So anyway, that gives you an update so far. Just thought I'd share a different way I'm coming up with preparing to run the bead roll. So you can't just think you can press this through on a machine like that, because what happens, it doesn't stretch enough. It's not like a reciprocating or hammer type machine where it's really squashing the material and adding the material that you need, because you've got to think that when you're in the middle of a panel and you create a bead like that, that extra length has to come from somewhere. Now if you're running a bead from one end right off the other end of the sheet, that's no problem. You end up just with an overall shorter sheet because you're basically turning it into corrugated iron. But when you're in the middle and the ends are terminating before the end of the sheet, then you have to create that material, and it's very difficult, I have found, to crush the material running through a bead roller. So in the past I've run it through the high crown wheel of my English wheel, but this sheet is so big that it is something I'd have to do together with my wife. I made the mistake of this sheet trying to English wheel it with, you know, the bins each side and everything to support it, and I just couldn't get it to work on my own. I ended up having to do it with my wife, which is otherwise you create too much fold in your bend. So what I'm trying out now, and has been successful, is I'm just belting the crap out of it. I've marked, as you can see here, I've marked each side of where the bead is going to go, and then I'm coming along here and then working back and forth, and this is just a piece of bar which is the same as that, and working back and forth, just going across like that, and just beating the hell out of it, and then coming along with this chaser, which is just flat one, just to smooth it out a little bit more. You can see that even after all that work, when it's going through the rollers, it smooths it out anyway. So you don't have to be overly careful. You're just trying to be as even as possible so that your stretch that you're creating is not too, you know, up and down. Otherwise you'll see that in the final bead. So you can see how much it's even bent the sheet up just from hammering right up the middle here, and I've still got, you know, the rest of it to do plus the next one, but I'm doing one bead at a time, so it's a bit easier on the body because you're really swinging at it, and I think it works out better just to do one at a time. That way also, if you create a better technique, then you know you can utilize that as you go along. So more is trying to try new processes and refine them. You can see how I've also rounded the ends of that one, which is just using a piece of old water pipe with the end cut out. Of course this is from the underside. I hammer that around the end of the bead, so it just finishes off nicely. Alright, hopefully I'll show you another update shortly when I've got these beads completed. What looked horrible before, you can see that it's all smoothed out by passing it back and forth through the bead roller. So the stretches was much needed, otherwise you just can't get the full height, for one. And two, it will pucker badly here, because if you've pulled the metal in this way by not stretching beforehand and then bead rolling it, you end up with this giant pucker at the end of all your beads. Now you see some people go in there, and this is a way you could do it if you wanted to, but is to cut or relieve the rest of all the way down here, or do some shrinking. There's usually a bit required anyway. I probably will do a tiny bit just on this edge here. That's because I stretched slightly beyond the end of the where I needed to. So that needs to be shrunk back down again. So you can also see that I've rounded the ends off already. So 2 down, 4 to go. I'm running over all the beads again. I had to make an adjustment on the bottom roller so it properly followed the exact contour of the upper one here, because if that doesn't sit exactly the same profile as that minus material thickness, you'll never get that crushing effect. And because you need extra material, that material's got to come from somewhere. It's either going to pull it in from the side. The pre-prep of stretching it should hopefully provide all it needs, but to get the final shape and crushing effect, you really need to make sure these two mesh properly. Now, another thing I also do once I've been through a couple of times is you'll see my little squiggly marks, and what happens is if I've got a low spot here, which would indicate that this hadn't been stretched quite enough, or the panel was not properly level as it went through the roller. So what I do is I push down on here quite hard where this is dipping. I push down on hard here, so it's not supported that end, but it is supported that end of the sheet. So if you push down while you're feeding through, you'll raise that area until it's dead level. You might have to do several passes back and forth, which will cause the top to stretch out and then lift this up, because currently there's a slight dip through there by a couple of millimeters. So by pushing down on there, that'll bring that up. The alternative is to run a shrinking disc each side. That will also bring that up, or hammer in here to stretch it out more, but then you're still going to have to run it back through here just to get the good shape. So it's just a technique that I use, that after you've got your general height, which might take half a dozen passes, to then carefully see where there's any dips, and then push down the sheet each side as that you're passing through that dipped area, and that'll help lift it up. This is what I'm talking about, it matching the profiles. You would think that the dies top and bottom would come like that, but you've got to really make sure that you've got slightly less of the material thickness all the way through from one side to the other, otherwise you won't get a proper formed bead. So I had to machine these two sides down to make the middle taller, and then shape the curve to match the top one. So you might even have to take a little bit out of the two shoulders on that. I never altered the curve here, only to make this one taller so it would actually fit inside there. And that's given me much more consistent beads, because you need that crushing effect. Even if you've pre-stretched, it's hard to get exactly the amount you need, and then you want to be able to take out those hammer marks as well. So this is what I was talking about. Update on the hard tonneau cover. It's been more difficult than I'd hoped. My original plan was to form the sides, all four sides, and then the ripped centre part in a separate piece. So it would have been 5 joins, with 3 of those 6 feet long. So I thought I could save one of the joins by running it up the centre. And what that also made, it was easier to wheel 2 halves rather than one great big panel, because it's very easy with a panel that big to flex the material by not supporting it correctly, because it's very hard to support something that flat and that big, and then you end up with all these creases and high spots, low spots, etc. So the wheeling did come out better than I expected, and easier than I thought. Unfortunately, my wife, with our years of dancing together, she knows how to follow a good lead, and she just listens to me, and I'm blessed with that she just responds and could get the feel of being a wheeling partner. not just a dancing partner, and that make a big deal. All those years of rock and roll, jive, Latin American, etc., it really paid off in a way I never thought would possible. Now, what's made this particularly difficult is planishing this centre. So I've had to tack weld a couple of trestles together to stop them moving. I don't know if you can see the dolly underneath there. I'm literally balancing that dolly and moving it along inch by inch to every spot along here. So I'll have to get out, move it along a little bit, get back on top, hammer a little bit, move it along, and that's taking forever. I mean, professionals charge $1 a foot for fully welded planished metal finish. I've probably got twice that in that, because just the awkwardness of reaching over that far, not being able to physically get my hand under and hold it and hammer at the same time. If I sort of twist myself underneath, I can just make it with the dolly, but then I can't see actually what I'm physically hammering. So it's been a lesson learned here. I would have been better off doing the couple of 6 feet, but who knows, I would have maybe had to repair more wheelie. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So it's still got a few waves in, but until I cut these ends off and weld in the rolled side, so these both ends at each end, which is just cut off square at the moment at the length I need, I am going to roll up another piece exactly the same as here, come back, cut back on 45-degree angle, go across here, and that will smooth over. So I don't even know the final shape. It looks way more curved this way, only because it's sitting up on the dolly at the moment, but you can't really tell how it's going to sit until it's fully framed. And later on, when you think you certainly don't want to work the middle anymore, when the centre support will go from one side of the sheet to the other underneath with the curvature that I'm after. So anyway, it's been hell on my back as well. This stretching out, I've got crushed discs, all my lumbar discs are crushed and in a wedge shape from being born with too much curvature in the lower part of my spine, and I can only do a few hours and then I've got to rest, do stretches, some Pilates, all that sort of stuff, just to get myself well enough to get back at it again. It's been really hard on my back and I've had to just go off and do other things. So sorry for the delay. Hopefully I'll put another video out when we get a bit further.